Ja, herzlich willkommen zurück zum Mission Safety Digital at A+A hier an dem heutigen Nachmittag zum Messeauftakt der A+A Messe. Hier live aus Düsseldorf, aus unserem Live-Studio. Wir haben spannende Themen heute vorbereitet. Wir waren heute Vormittag schon live und für alle, die neu mit dazugekommen sind, machen wir jetzt nochmal einen kurzen Technikcheck. Was ihr wissen müsst, ist, dass ihr Fragen gerne bei uns im Chat stellen könnt. Einfach unterhalb der Streamseite das Chatfenster nutzen. Meine Kollegen sind fleißig im Backoffice dabei, die beantworten gerne eure Fragen. Und ja, wir freuen uns auf alles.
You can use the chat function for giving us some tips, recommendations, asking questions. We're also planning an interaction with you, and for that you'll need this QR app compatible mobile phone.
Das seht ihr hier eingeblendet in dem Streamfenster. Einfach mal Daumen hoch oder
you see, you can also give us applause if you feel like it, or a thumbs up. And we're looking forward to your reactions. Now, for any communication after the event, you can use our central email address. We're showing it to you here, together with the QR code. And I think we're ready to start now, so let's start off with this short video.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen.
Hello, a warm welcome to this year's A+A.
Ja, und jetzt nochmal ein herzliches Willkommen zurück und das ist unser
welcome back. That's our official start.
Nach der Pandemie ist vor der
We're
Pandemie.
going to talk about a subject specific to the pandemic. The motto is before the pandemic, or after the pandemic is before the pandemic. But before we get into this, I'd like to point out a few things. First of all, in German we use the du form, and we're going to use that again in this session. My name is Kim Pietz. I work for Dräger in Lübeck. I'm event manager, and it's my honor today and tomorrow to conduct you through these sessions. We're going to look over to our trade fair, but here at trade fair booth. But here at this set, we always conform with the strictest guidelines regarding COVID prevention. Everybody here is vaccinated or tested or recovered. And I'd like to summarize what we've done now, or what we've seen now for you today. But before that, I'm going to switch over to Berlin to our artist friend, Ingrid, who's preparing artworks from our sessions today. Hi, everybody. Ingrid is my name. I'm an illustrator, and I'm accompanying these sessions today and tomorrow. And I'm recording everything that occurs to me, and I'm going to show you a few things we've seen so far. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I can show you, this is first of all the live presentation, and for the first time in some time, people are meeting directly and interacting and exchanging ideas. We're talking about protection and, of course, the demographic changes that our society is experiencing, also multilingual production venues. We talked about light breathing protection and what's important here. That was a very multifaceted subject, and we have a very wide range of applications for the various Dräger products. And then we talked about a fit test. I'm going to explain. No, I won't explain that to you here because I'm just the illustrator. I'm not the technician. But we're looking at different things. We're going to look at things today again and tomorrow. And here's the signpost. And today we're going to talk about pandemic precaution. And I'm going to also, I hope, be inspired from this session for further artistic works, which I will show you at the end of our session today. Thank you, Ingrid. I hope you have fun with your drawings, and I'll see you later. Now, the motto of this session is, of course, A plus A. It's part of our motto, which means we're going to switch over to our colleagues down at the trade fair booth. And I see that Lisa already has a guest there. Great to see you again. I'm just looking in for this moment, and later I'm going to switch back to you and I'll get some feedback from you. I also have some competent support in this studio. I'm going to go over now to my colleague Dion. I think those of you who've been here already today, they will know Dion, but for those of you who don't know him, here's the introduction. Well, Dion is my name. I'm event manager in Düsseldorf and responsible for introducing innovation products in the market, and I also record various trends of demand for our customers. And of course, we had a major challenge over the last 2 years with the corona pandemic, and that was a very interesting subject for me, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, you mentioned the pandemic, and of course, that's a very big issue. I'd like to ask you, what affects you personally in relation to this subject? Well, apart from the empty shelves for toilet paper in the supermarkets, I linked very much my career with this pandemic, because just after I'd started with Dräger, it just happened to break out, and we were immediately affected by lockdowns and by the various restrictions. So we really had a lot trying to come to terms with that. It was interesting also on the other hand, and fortunately we were able to continue working from home office. In our free time we had all the same challenges as everybody else, not least looking for toilet paper, but we also had professional challenges. We're going to talk about them today. Okay, now challenges. I'd like to hand over now to you. As I said, if you want to communicate with us, a very good idea is to get your QR code compatible mobile phone and then scan this code here, QR code, and then you can answer this question: what challenges did you face in your operations in the course of the pandemic? So what were the main challenges you faced in your operations during the pandemic? We'd like to get an idea of where you stood and the situation and the circumstances you faced. Okay, I hear that some answers are already going in. Hold on. Dion, let's see, can we see anything here? Here we are. Yes, these are subjects which we're going to, a lot of them are subjects we're going to look at here. Logistics, of course, that's a very interesting subject. Personal contact, of course, that's something that we all found lacking, I think, in the last 2 years, and which is fortunately coming back again. And this trade fair is an example. Procurement of materials. So I think there are a lot of exciting subjects here, and I see our word cloud is growing and growing, and it's great to see your responses. If you wish, you can write your personal pandemic story into our chat or use the email address which we showed you before. We're looking forward very much to your responses. Now, we saw before that Anneliese down at the trade fair booth, she's with his colleague Birgit. I'd like to go down to them again now and find out what they've been doing now for the last few months in terms of their work. Thank you, Kim and Dion. Now I'm live here at the ANA in Düsseldorf, and I'm really pleased to be here. And right beside me we have Birgit Horn. Birgit, you are project manager for the A plus A, and you're also a member of the advisory council for the trade fair. I'd like to ask you, how do you feel about organizing this again finally and meeting so many people? Well, you can imagine that was a very difficult time for us at the trade fair in Düsseldorf. We weren't really able to do anything. We had a caravan salon, and that was really for the general public, and the A&A is now starting with the for the specialist market for a particular sector. And yes, there were major problems for the teams. We really had a lot of tension, a lot of preparatory work to do, and of course we are very, very relieved to see the doors open and the people flow in this morning. It was a very emotional moment for me and for the entire team. Yes, I can imagine with, for us now, Dräger, it was more or less the same, getting in contact with people again, and we're very grateful to you that you made that possible and offered us this venue, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from each other again in the next few days. But everybody has a certain emotional impact, and when they experience this personally. I'd like to ask you, what was your personal experience of the pandemic? Well, first of all, the restrictions, I think everybody experienced them, and of course for us as trade fair organizers, pandemic means totally new planning, different planning. Security and safety, of course, is the most important thing. We had to take every possible measure just to facilitate the experience, the trade fair experience, and of course, especially to make it safe and secure. You know, we had to open the, increase the width of the halls so that there's plenty of space for people to walk past each other. Also, everybody has to prove that they're tested or vaccinated or recovered from the disease. But I think also personally, I think a lot of us can say that it posed a question to each of us: how do we work? How do we look after ourselves? How do we look after each other? And for our subject now, safety and security at work, it was a very big boost, I think. It was something that really went into our DNA in a way, because of course, you know, we were already looking at these things, but now suddenly the awareness has been expanded way beyond the norm, the confines of the normal people, the people who normally dealt with that. Yes, you had to react to new measures. What specific measures affected you at the trade fair? Well, I've already told you, you know, the 3G about the vaccination or testing control, and then the increased distance between the stands and the booths. And then you must remember that it was only in July that we heard that this fair can actually, this exhibition can really take place. So we didn't really have so much time, and the desire for a big concrete live platform was very strong, and we had the desire, we had the plan, we had the wish a longer time before it was really, we found out that was really possible. So we had to pack a lot of planning into this time, a lot of preparation into this limited time. A lot of people weren't sure if it was going to take place or not, and if so, how is it going to take place? So we really had to provide a lot of information, increase our transparency, and open ourselves to the public, to potential visitors. And you can see now that's what makes it so rewarding to see everybody come here, to see all the interesting discussions going on at the stands. I must say there are great presentations, especially the Dräger stand. It looks really attractive, very unusual, I must say, and something that really entices me to go and visit and find out more. We want to meet people, we want to listen to people, interact with people, find out what do they want, what do we want, and in this way come to a balance for good, profitable business that will satisfy everybody. Okay, thank you. We're of course very, very pleased to be here today. Now, security and safety when contacting each other, that's something very important for us today, and we've got my colleague here beside me to talk specifically about that kind of thing. Olli, can you tell us about your person and your history here? Well, Olli is my name. I'm a marketing manager, global, and I'm especially interested in industrial breathing protection. That's my main point of focus in the company. So you are the expert also for the area of breathing protection and the pandemic. Now, the pandemic is a very emotional issue for many people. I'd like to ask you, how did you perceive it? How did you experience it? How did it influence you or affect your maybe daily work? Well, I must say that the restrictions of social contacts, you know, the limitations there. That definitely took a lot of getting used to, especially in the job I work in, where I interact with people so spontaneously. I also like to do that socially, and that's why I was really glad to come back here and see old familiar faces, meet new people, and interact and exchange ideas with everybody. Yes, that's why we're here. We're here to contact you. Anybody who wishes to speak to us, we're here for you. But until then, we're going to go back now to the studio.
Ja, danke euch dreien
Okay.
für diesen tollen Einstieg vom Messestand. Annalisa,
Thank
du hast
you
es gerade schon gesagt. Wir sehen dich später
for
noch
those
mal
perspectives
wieder.
from
Und,
the
wir legen hier jetzt mal
fair
wieder
booth,
Theorie
and we're going to
los.
go back to you
Ja,
later.
das
But
Thema Pandemie,
first,
das
a
hat
little
uns
bit
ja
about the
irgendwie schon in der
theory. Now,
Vergangenheit
we
immer
were talking
beschäftigt
about
oder hatte in
pandemic.
der Vergangenheit immer Präsenz.
And of course,
Was könnt ihr
pandemics have
daraus
been
für sich
around
lernen?
for some time. I'd like to ask you, what can
in
we
der
learn from
Vergangenheit,
this?
haben
Well,
wir schon immer
pandemics
erlebt,
in
der
the
Geschichte der
past have
Menschheit.
always
Wenn
been
man
a
sich jetzt
feature
mal
of
die
human
Folie hier
history.
anguckt,
If you look at
für
this
mich eine
sheet, it starts
Erkenntnisse,
in
die
the
ich in den
1st,
letzten
2nd
Jahren
century
gezogen
after
hatte,
Christ,
war
like
das,
165 to
wir
180
seit
AD,
165
all
jetzt
the
auf
way
der
up
Folie
to
nach
today.
Regelmäßig Pandemien
You
oder
see that there have been
Epidemien hatten.
regular
Was aber vor allen Dingen
pandemics
auffällt und
and
was relevant ist, dass wir
epidemics
seit dem
along
19.
this
Jahrhundert
timeline.
herum eine
But what we can also
höhere
see from
Frequenz
that is
haben,
just the
also eine
frequency,
deutliche
how it
Zunahme
increased
an
in the
Epidemien oder auch
19th and
Pandemien,
20th centuries,
aus
and
verschiedensten
how it's
Gründen.
probably,
Man
unfortunately, going
spricht
to
schon vom
increase in the future
Pandemie-Zeitalter
too. We're
mittlerweile,
talking about the
was wir natürlich
pandemic
alle nicht
era,
hoffen wollen.
which of course
Ich meine,
nobody
keiner
likes
möchte
to
die
hear,
Einschränkungen
nobody
erleben,
wants
die
to
wir
have
erlebt
that,
haben in den
nobody
letzten
wants
2
to
Jahren. Dennoch muss man
experience
sagen,
regularly
es
the
ist ein Thema,
restrictions
was
that we've
präsent
had for the
bleibt.
last 2 years,
Und,
but it is a
man muss
subject that
leider
we're going to have to
sagen,
come
nach
to
der
terms
Pandemie,
with
vor
and
der
live
Pandemie,
with.
es wird
And
wahrscheinlich
remember,
auch in
after the
Zukunft
pandemic is
wieder
also
Pandemien geben und
before
umso
the
wichtiger, dass man
panic.
sich darauf
Post-pandemic is also prior pandemic
Du hast es
period.
ja
That
gerade schon
means we
gesagt,
have to
einem
prepare
ist das
and take
bewusst.
all
Und
suitable
trotzdem hat uns
precautions
jetzt
for the
Corona-Pandemie
coming
im Jahr
pandemic.
2020 trotzdem komplett
Thank you.
überrumpelt.
That makes it very, very concrete.
Ja,
And even
ich
though we
glaube,
had them
zwei
before, we were
Gründe
still
vor
very
allen
much
Dingen, die
surprised
dort relevant
by
waren.
this
Grund
pandemic
Nummer 1
in
ist vor allen Dingen,
2019.
dass
Why?
die letzte Pandemie
Well, I
über
think
100
one
Jahre her
reason
war,
is
die
that the
spanische Grippe,
previous
ist auch
one
alle
was
allen
100 years
bekannt.
ago.
Und die
That's the
zweite
Spanish
wichtige
flu,
Sache ist die,
which I think most
exponentielle
people know
Ausbreitung
about. And the
einer
other
solchen
was the
Krankheit. Die
exponential
wird oftmals unterschätzt. Es ist einfach
spread
auch
of
ein
this
komplexes
disease.
Produkt
It's a
oder
very
Konstrukt. Ich mache das
complex
immer ganz gerne anhand eines
situation,
Beispiels,
and I think I could illustrate that on a favorite example of mine. If, let's say, you've got a pool covered with blossoms from flowers, and let's say after 20 days it's 100% covered, and then you ask yourself, on what day was it half covered? And then, by analogy, it would be the previous day. So on the 20th day, it was completely covered, but on the 19th day, it was half covered. So you can see how exponentially this is growing. And that's what we have to face up to. Okay, when the pandemic arrives, how can we protect about it? Well, as we also say in the business, at the time of crisis, there's no time to prepare. Crisis time is not preparatory time. You have to have preparations done beforehand. And as I said, there's exponential growth of problems, of demand, of supply issues, and inside we saw this just in 2019-20, that inside a few months it was already just enough time to sell out practically all the protective equipment we had, which means that we have to take adequate precautions. So I see that this loss of toilet paper was really the minor problem. The industry was very much affected. It was, we ourselves as a company did, almost every other business company did too. We had to supply the market. We had a very, very increased demand because of the lockdown. The demand was just enormous at some times. We also had to supply our regular customers as well as was possible. Although, of course, I had to say we had to sometimes fall back on manual allocation and get the goods to our customers as well as possible. But we've learned from it, and we've learned one thing is that preparation for pandemics is something that's essential and indeed vital. Okay, but we did already have solutions before the panic, or before the pandemic. Yes, before the panic started with the pandemic, we already had precautions with adequate stocks. But now, since then, we've developed preventive solutions, which we'll talk about in detail later. First of all, the breathing protection solution is one thing which most people will be familiar with. I'd like to ask you maybe for 4 key points that characterize Dräger's work. Well, first of all, is finding the right breathing protection. That's very, very important for use in a pandemic. And secondly, getting the supply up and running and guaranteeing suitable, adequate equipment where it's needed. And then developing a logistics system to provide proper supplies and also advice to your customers. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's say now the correct breathing protection. Let's take that key point. What can Dräger show us? Well, Dräger can show us, we've seen this morning, a wide range of applications that goes from FFP masks, full masks, half masks, filter devices with power assist and whatever. There's a whole lot of service and instruction required regarding the right choice and the fitting and the working with, whether in the private area or industrial applications, for protecting the worker himself, for protecting the environment, also protecting other people with valves, without valves. And of course, breathing resistance is very important, comfort of wearing, and all of the areas that are relevant in normal breathing protection, just to get everything right for the people who need it most. Yes, we have very high quality standards for our products. I'd like to ask you, how do we generally differ from our competitors? Well, that's a very big and very important question. In Lübeck, where we have our manufacturing center, we also have a test center where during the development of these masks, we also test them for quality. And during the pandemic, we had for the first time also external systems, like systems came from other customers. They brought them to our testing laboratory. And unfortunately, I have to say, about 3/4 of the external products that we took in from other manufacturers just failed to fulfill the normal requirements. And they just didn't comply with the regulations. And that's a very, very important point that we have to look out for, and which really stimulates us to insist always on high-quality products. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Now we'll switch back over to Anneliese and Olli at the booth. Let's see what they have to show us from there. Over to you. Thank you, Kim and Dion. Yes, the right breathing protection and quality products. Now, Olli, you have something around that. We're going to start with what you have on your around your neck there. Yes, we have our Expo 1700 here mask. And Anneliese, I don't know the way you felt, but with the hygiene masks with 2 loops around your ear, I must say that they held you well, but as soon as you took them off and laid them down, they disappeared. Now, the good thing about the 1700 is that it's a built-in standby function. I can show you. Let's say I'm doing something and then I don't need the mask, but then when I suddenly do need it, I just put my fingers in here, I pull. I'm just showing you, because of course I'm going to keep talking to you, so I'm only going to indicate it. I pull this up, loop it around as a harness around my head, and then it immediately fits perfectly. Very practical and very perfect fit. I think that's very clever. I must say, I've got maybe a narrow face and they always slip forward in me, and this looks like really a very good and suitable and tight-fitting but comfortable product. And also, if you look at our product portfolio here, you see, for example, a half mask on this model. Now, the advantage of a half mask is the high-quality sealing lip that goes around the contours of the face and matches them and ensures a very, very tight and airtight fit. And then we move over here to these with particle filters. We have the protection that you know from the FFP mask, and in these cases they're actually reusable. But they're not the only products in our pandemic portfolio. Also the air-powered filter system. That's right. I know about this because it's in such high demand here. Maybe we can look in through the crowd. Well, I'm going to move in and speak to you. Now we have here an air power filter system, and the advantage is you have a motor here that filters and cleans the air in one piece, and it just means that it facilitates my work, simplifies my work very, very much. It's got a very high protection level, although it also has to be said that this is mostly focused on protecting the wearer. If I want to protect the third person, this high pressure system is not the right solution for protecting people in your environment. So who is this one suitable for? Well, let's say in hospitals, you know, there it's in strong demand when people are working for a long time in, let's say, areas where there are risks of infections with infected people, then it definitely does facilitate people working on a daily basis and long term with where they're exposed to hazards. Okay, great. Thank you, Olli, for that very, very brief introduction. And now back to the studio. Thanks now to both of you. You are right. We're going to talk again very soon. Okay, we're finished now looking at the products. I'd like to ask you, what about when the products aren't available? What solutions does Dräger have in that case? Well, we have an inventory concept, a new innovation for us where we keep the perfect masks for the customer. We keep them readily available and in good stock. How can I imagine that? Well, Dräger has its own warehouses, and we keep these FFP masks there. They're physically available in Germany at any time. And in the case of pandemic, or it can be various other things, where there's sudden high demand, the customers have got right to access this and to draw their products when they take part in this system. If they don't need the products, then they don't have to take them, so there's no cost. What advantage is that for the customer? Well, one advantage is, first of all, exclusive access rights. They also save capital in warehouse costs. They don't have to have their own warehouses. They're also protected against price fluctuations. In the case of high demand, we've seen that, like in the last pandemic, that masks suddenly became very expensive because of the high demand. That's not the concept here. Masks are sold at a fixed price. It was fixed in advance. And masks also are regularly renewed in our warehouses because they've only got a certain shelf life, and that the customer can always be sure that they're getting up-to-date, fresh masks. Okay, great. So let's say we have then the right masks in the right quantities. How do we get them to the users where they're needed? Let's say a large industrial plant. Well, we also thought of a logistic plan for this. That's or an aid for logistics. That's the FFP dispenser, that we can bring the masks directly to the user. We actually have one here at our trade fair booth, and I was there this morning, and the demand for this dispenser is really, really big, and I think it would be a good idea if we could look at that now. Hi, Annalisa and Olli, could you show us this? Yes, here it is. We just added here this dispenser, the FFP mask dispenser. Olli, could you tell us what's special about that and how it works? Well, the question of availability we talked about is very, very important in such times of corona. The question is, where do you get it at the right place, at the right time? Well, this need brought us to this solution. Dräger had been working with these things over a long time because of the shutdown and rental management system we have, but because of the high demand, we decided to expand this concept to include our FFP masks. So how does it work? Well, we simply position this device at the customers on the customer's plant, where the workers come. The workers turn up, they go to the terminal, they select here dispenser, and here you've got then the range. They can click on the FFP mask here, unless there are other products too. The user can then identify himself with a scanner with his work ID system, and then immediately it worked before. I think we probably didn't put enough into it. Okay, let's try it again. Maybe I didn't log in here yet properly. Okay, let's do that. Let's try it now. You see it works. You scan immediately your ID and immediately the mask comes out. Hey, two. You see, that was the previous one. Okay, great. Thank you. Great demonstration. I think it's really good. It's also very attractive looking. It's like almost a drinks dispenser for industry. Yes, great. I think the advantages should be clear, you know. You can reduce contact with people when you're getting your masks. You can also see who has been using masks and of course who hasn't, and it just creates transparency for names, for the customer, for the employer who has been using the masks. Okay, great. I think it's definitely a big added value for industry. We can definitely visit the trade fair, but we've come now to the end of our contribution. So for today, we're going to say bye-bye. We'll see you again tomorrow. Back now to Kim and Dion. Okay, thank you, Anneliese and Ollie. That was really a cool demonstration of that great dispenser, I think.
Ich gucke gerade mal links in die Regie und ich sehe, wir haben Chatfragen bekommen. Komm doch mal zu mir, Lutz. Sehr gut. Ich bin gespannt, Dion, ob wir die beantworten können. So, die erste Frage ist, was kostet ein FFP-Automat?
So we have questions here. The first one is, what does the mask, the dispenser cost? Well, that depends on how long the employer is going to keep it on site. There's a monthly rate, a weekly rate, but ultimately you're only going to pay the masks that you've used, that you've taken from the dispenser, and that's all you pay for. So you pay simply for what you've needed, and I think that's an advantage for everybody. Okay, second question. Can I store only FFP masks in this dispenser? No, you can also store filters. That's a major advantage of this system when you think about, like, some people work with half masks and they need filters, so it's not just for FFPs, even though that's the name. It can also hold these filters and various other things. Okay, now we talked about having the right products, having them available and in stock. Do you think we're well equipped for the next pandemic? Well, not quite. We're almost there, but we're not quite there yet. Now, Dräger is aiming at a very comprehensive and exhaustive pandemic precaution system, and we still have to check customer process analysis, customer possible contingent demand analysis, our staff planning, a crisis committee, what that could look like. So we want to make a very comprehensive approach, and this way then we'll go to our customers, present all this information and data to the customers, educate them, train them. Some of these courses go over several months. We're already doing that with some customers, and we've completed it with some other customers. We see ourselves there as consultant, as advisors, giving our know-how and the experience we've gained over the decades to our customers. Thank you very much. But there was so much there. I think I'd be very happy with a summary. And for that, I think no better way to go than back to Ingrid in Berlin to see what creative images she's come up with. Well, Ingrid, do you think you're prepared for the next pandemic? Well, I hope there's not going to be another one personally. Let this pass us by. But I imagine that in the industrial sector it's very different. You have to take precautions. My pen was practically smoking from the friction I was using, and I was drawing so much. As I said, and it's now going back to the studio, right? First I was back in your studio, then the topic came, this is pandemic precaution. And that's, you see, what happens when I start looking at this with my pen in hand. Then we went over to the dispenser. I know it's for companies, but I'd really love to have one in my house, in my department, that I just, you know, something that maybe reminds me, here you've got your mask, here it is, it reminds me to put on take a mask before I leave. We talked about protecting yourself, protecting others, in the context of breathing protection, but also with these air-powered filter systems. And I imagine, like in one of these holy festivals where people chuck around color and paint. Now, I don't have these really risks. Fortunately, I work at my desk and easel, and that's why I'm really glad for the opportunity to learn so much about it, you know. And I heard also about your stocking concept and inventory, and just as Dion said, that we always have fresh products available for you, and that really inspired me. You know, it's just a very good idea to think that you're always going to get these fresh protection, that nothing is too old. And I was also inspired by this idea that post-pandemic is also pre-pandemic time, because the next one is coming. And we talked then also about crisis communication, resources and personal planning. The supply chains and process analysis, I had to write it all down, and simulation exercises. And as you said, you know, the next pandemic is probably inevitable. And I would like, when things go around, like this football, I'd like all of you who are in the stream to see this as my goodbye to you until tomorrow. Okay, thank you, Ingrid. Really great pictures. I must say, very amused. It's great to see them at the end of each session, and I'm really looking forward to what you have to produce tomorrow after those sessions. So we're finished now with this session, but before we conclude, I'd like you to give us just a few words to conclude. Well, the probability of a pandemic is still very high, a new pandemic. You know, as we saw before, we have to say, unfortunately, nobody wants that in our private lives. We've seen the kind of difficulties it can cause, but I think we have a very good portfolio for supporting our customers in such an eventuality. We've got great devices, we've got systems, we've got a great stocking system, we've got an advice program to prepare our customers for the next pandemic so that they are not negatively affected by it. Great, thank you very much, Dion. I really hope you enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the trade fair. But now from me, I just have to say that's everything for today. We're going to be live again tomorrow. Smart safety is the first issue, and we're going to have some more topics after that. So again, don't forget, tomorrow 11 o'clock, we're looking forward to seeing you again. And again, you can use the chat. We're going to be around here for some time. We're going to look at the feedback you give us, whether through the chat or email or whatever. So it was really nice being with you today. I hope to see you again tomorrow. Stay healthy and have a nice time.